Hi and welcome to the first installment of Saints and Stuff for the Queens of Our Past podcast. You'll notice that today I have a guest, Emily from Tudor, I Hardly Know Her, one of my favorite podcasts. We talk about popular Catholic saints of the time of the Tudor period and passion bearers from the time who became popular later on. So I really hope you enjoyed the episode. I recorded our discussion and you're going to be hearing that today. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, I'm ready. Do you want to introduce yourself and your podcast?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily, and I'm from the podcast Tudor, I Hardly Know Her. It's a comedy podcast about those crazy shenanigans that the Tudors got up to in the 1500s. Comedy podcast, and I'm an armchair historian, so please understand that. And I'm really excited to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, I always see the stupid reviews that are like, how dare you use the, God in the name, and I'm like, what? Calm down. I left a review that was, passive-aggressively, this is how historians talk. Literally, all of my teachers, dropped the F-bomb. They all grade our papers while drunk, and, I get, wine stains back.
Okay, well, that makes me feel really good, so I'm calling myself a historian now.
You should. I don't have a degree yet, but I give you a degree.
Hooray, honorary degree. I'll take it.
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about the lady saints who were popular in Tudor England for my, little side part, because I usually talk just about queens, but I want to start talking about mistresses and saints and having, different episodes on the same topics, and I'm calling this section Saints and Stuff. So I tried to make it cute, but
I'm going to let you start, because it's your show.
Okay, so St. Catherine of Alexandria was really popular during the Tudor times, and she was the daughter of Constance, the governor of Alexandria in Egypt. So I'm going to jump the gun and say she was probably really educated, because they had, the Library of Alexandria, and she was also pretty wealthy. So she probably had, a great upbringing and was very educated. So she had a vision of the Virgin and Child, and for some reason in all the history books they call her princess, but her dad's a governor, and I don't...
Maybe it's am I only thinking for that is maybe it's how a duchess, the daughter of a duchess, could sometimes be called?
Yeah, I think that in a lot of places, princess is, a really loose term.
Yeah.
It's just, there are dozens of princesses in Russia, and, you know that not all of them are,
Yeah. So, maybe it's the loose term princess, just somebody of noble blood.
Right.
Who's a daughter.
So, a dude named Maxentius proposed to her, and she said, nah, Jesus is the only man for me. And
I like the name Maxentius. I'm using that for my future children.
Please do. It's a good one. I have, a whole list, and one of them's Theodora, for Empress Theodora.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. My mom's like, but I'm like, Ma, you just gotta, you'll accept it later. And he was pissed and ordered her to be executed by breaking her on the wheel. So basically they tie you, I don't know how they would break your bones on a wheel. I imagine them just tying you to a wheel and then bouncing it.
Yeah, isn't that something frats do when they're drunk?
Yes, probably. I live close to a frat, but luckily they're very quiet. But, I don't know how, I guess they, turn it, and it, spin. I imagine it kind of being the rack. I don't know. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm picturing, too, is something like the rack. That's gotta be brutal.
Yeah, but when she touched it, the wheel broke.
Oh.
So Jesus struck down, I guess, and said no. But, so then she was just beheaded, and apparently fucking milk came out of her neck.
As you will.
They said something like milk.
That's, I mean, if it's something like milk, maybe it was pus.
Oh, God. What the fuck was wrong with her neck, then?
She has a serious infection.
Oh.
That's weird.
Get your glands checked. But she died around 305 CE or AD, whatever you want to use, in Alexandria, Egypt. And she is the patroness of unmarried girls because she did not want to put a ring on it.
So it totally makes sense that Tudors loved her because they're just like, make my daughters happy.
Yeah.
In a convent or married.
Yeah, and even if you're in a convent, you're married to Jesus, so...
Yeah, so you're married.
Yeah.
Either way, you're set.
Which brings us to St. Catherine of Siena, and my subtitle here is Jesus Baby Foreskin Wedding Ring.
This sounds like the next big wedding trend. Let's put it on Pinterest.
Yeah, I mean, guys, just, like, save your baby foreskin for your future wife. She'll be so, like, excited.
They're gonna want that.
Yes. Have a little diamond put in.
Oh, that's creepy.
Ugh, it's so gross.
I'm looking forward to hearing about this.
Like, so she's one of the later saints from, like, the 1300s.
Oh, wow.
And she was a Dominican nun. And she got the papacy to return to Rome from Avignon.
Was that when there were multiple...
That's when there were three
popes. Was that right
popes.
after there were multiple popes fighting over the papacy?
Yeah.
And so one of them ended up in Avignon?
Yeah, I went to Avignon a few years ago, and I visited the palace of the Pope while I was there, and it's really cool. If you're ever there, definitely go. Also, if you're ever in New York, I'll give you a fucking tour of, like, all the amazing museums, because I literally am required to go to them every single day, so.
Dream. I'm going back to school.
Yay! Are you actually?
No, I want to.
Oh, well, we all have dreams.
And one of my life goals, bucket list, go back to school.
Yeah.
Earn a history degree. Be happy.
Do it. So, yeah, I think there were 3 popes, and they were all just, like, fighting each other and being like, no, I'm the right pope, and they all, like, excommunicated each other, and were just being men. And then she wrote a spiritual treatise, which I don't know what was in that, but it was probably a lot of holy stuff.
Of course.
Yeah, and she suffered the stigmata, so she had... like, the wounds of Jesus.
Was the treatise about the popes all fighting each other, or was it about something else? I think the Dominicans are, like, really peaceful, so it was probably that, and she was probably like, come on, guys, like, calm down. Okay. Well, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm reading right now a book on Hildegard von Bingen, and it's like she was a German nun, and she had, like, the weirdest visions. Like, she was on acid. And, like, look it up.
There were magic mushrooms all around.
Literally. There is one drawing that I want to get a tattoo of, and it's the cosmic egg that she, like, dreamed of, and, like, she has this whole illuminated manuscript devoted to her.
That sounds so trippy. You're gonna have to send me the name of this book you're reading.
Bizarre. Well, you can, like, download the book from online. Like, her actual, like, treatise and stuff, you can download, like, Hildegard of Bingen. It's spelled exactly how you think it is. It's bizarre. People think that she, like, was probably schizophrenic.
Oh, man.
And just had, like, weird hallucinations that, like, weren't, like, terrifying. They were just, like, grandiose and amazing.
I'm always intrigued by how, I mean, from growing up Catholic standpoint, how everybody's like, yes, this person was a saint and they had visions from God. I mean, if you look at Joan of Arc, she had visions from God, and we totally believe her. But if they were, like, in that time period, they're like, clearly you're insane.
Yeah, and it's really weird. I don't know. There's one drawing of God, and he's, like, literally, like, the circumference of a circle, like, holding naked Jesus.
Oh, sure.
It's wild. There was one podcast, to get on tangents, it's called Rude Tutors.
Oh, yeah, definitely checked out that
They have this whole episode that's devoted to, like, scam saints and, like, how they faked everything. And, like, one lady had, like, a diaphragm in her, like, stomach to make it look like she was glowing.
Ew. Oh, God. Ouch.
Like, not actually in her stomach, but, like, under her, like, robes.
Oh, okay. That makes a little more sense.
And then she, like, did, like, this thing, like, the people on, like, sidewalks do, where it looked like she was floating.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. Check out that episode, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was called.
That's okay, I'll find it.
Yeah. But, so she had a mystical marriage with Jesus, or she said she did, in which he gave her his foreskin to wear as a wedding ring, to get back to Catherine. Which, I'm like, how did he, like, propose? Like, did he get on one knee?
What do you think Jesus is like as a romantic? Is he very romantic, or do you think he was just matter of fact and like, we should get married, here's my foreskin?
He's probably such a tender lover. Like, he's so gentle and kind, and he whispers, like, sweet nothings in your ear, and he's like, you're my little lamb.
Very likely.
Yeah.
I want that to be my new nickname.
He also looks like a hipster, and, like, he's acclimated to, the 2018, like, he wears a man bun, and, like, Birkenstocks.
I mean, he's already got the sandals down.
I mean, yeah. And, like, really short shorts, and, like, a Hawaiian shirt.
Perfect. Love it. So, he gave her his foreskin as a wedding ring, as you will.
Yeah, and she said only she could see it.
Of course.
And so she is the patroness saint against fire, illness, and Allentown, Pennsylvania.
How do you think Allentown is, like, especially known for their foreskin rings, or?
I don't know. I mean, is there a guild for that? Is that, like, do you think they have a union?
Allentown, Pennsylvania. I'm going there to figure out what that's all about.
Literally, it's like 2 hours away from where I live in, like, rural Maryland, so I could probably get there and be like, tell me the goods. Like,
I didn't know cities had patronesses.
Neither did I, but now I'm really curious.
Yeah, I'm like gonna Google what my city's patroness is.
Yeah, we all also have, like, patrons on our birthday and stuff, so.
Yes,
My English professor, freshman year, wrote a book that was the birthday book of saints.
And that sounds like a cool book.
It's really funny, and I found it in a bookstore, and I brought it to him, and I had him sign it.
That sounds just like something I would do.
And he would, like, sit in the class and ask our birthdays, and then he would be like, oh, your patron saint is this, and, like, he, like, knew everything.
That's pretty cool.
He was really wild. Sean Kelly is a wild man. He's well known, I think, probably.
That's really impressive, though.
Yeah. But, so Catherine of Siena died at the age of 33 in Rome in 1380. So she did a lot. She was young. In a short span of time.
Yeah.
That's like how Martin Luther King died at, like, 37.
I know, isn't that crazy?
I told my sister that, and she's like, oh my god, I have so much work to do.
I think I saw something. Martin Luther King and Anne Frank were born in the same year.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Sorry, I hope you're okay with me cursing.
True. What?
I hope you're okay with me cursing. I mean, you guys curse all the time. But... Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I saw was Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born in the same year.
That's wild.
Isn't it? Don't you love history because you don't think of those kind of things running in together?
Yeah. It's like,
and then they did.
Those kind of things. It's also like, my mom was born in, like, 60. So she's like, I remember when JFK got shot. Like,
yeah.
And she was like, I remember where I was. It was like a whole, like, 9/11 thing for them.
Yup.
Yeah.
History's wild.
Crazy. So the last very important saint is Saint Anne, who's the mama of the Virgin Mary, and I think that speaks for herself. But
yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, and then she had 2 or 3 other daughters, and one of them, and they all had the name Mary, like George Foreman.
What? Was it like Mary? There's one Mary Ann, Mary Elizabeth, and then there's just Mary.
No, there is Mary Elizabeth, and then it's Mary Salome.
Mary Salome?
Yeah.
Huh. And I make fun of the Tudors for giving their kids the same names.
Yeah, I guess biblical times it was just, like, even small. Well, they have, like, weird names, because I, like, also am, like, studying theology and, like, Christian ideas and stuff for, like, part of my major and my focus, and there are so many wild names, like Issachar, like Bathsheba. Bathsheba, yeah. Yes, like, ugh. And I'm like, Mom, I want to name my kid Salome. And she's like, she had John the Baptist, like, executed. And I was like, but she's also the sister of the Virgin Mary. So I think we're good.
Oh, man, I'd hate to be the sister of the Mother of Christ.
Literally, she probably had, like, such bad middle child syndrome. She was like, nobody loves me. My older sister got married at, like, 21. Now she has, like, 10 kids. And then fucking Mary has, like, the baby Jesus.
That's gotta be awful. Oh, man.
I hope she had a good life.
Well, hopefully her mom, St. Anne, was able to intercede for her later on.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds really cool. So, are you ready to talk about Jane?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So, I like giving a little bit of background about people. So, quick flash history on Jane Grey. Her mother was Henry VIII's sister, Mary Tudor, and her father was, her grandmother was the sister of Henry VIII. And her grandfather was Henry VIII's best friend, Charles Brandon. So Mary Tudor and Charles Brandon had a daughter named Frances, and she married a man named Henry Grey. So they then had 3 daughters because it was very difficult to conceive a son in that time period, apparently. There was something in the water. Yeah. So there's Jane, Catherine, and Mary. Jane was the oldest. And she was born around the same month as Edward, her cousin, who would be the king. And some sources say maybe as late as 36 or sometimes it may be late 1536, it may be early 1537. I just found this out, but the Tudor calendar year started in March, not January. So things get a little bit screwed up when you look at that. But then also, women's birthdays weren't really noted. Yeah. That's why nobody can agree on how old Anne Boleyn was, how old Catherine Howard was. They just don't know. They're just kind of piecing it all together. But they think Lady Jane was born close to the same time as Edward. So she received a very humanist education. She learned Latin, Greek, and Hebrew with her tutor, John, I don't know how to say his last name, Aylmer? Aylmer. And she was a committed Protestant. Very, very committed to her faith, which it kind of helped that Henry VIII's England was going through a ton of political upheaval, but it was still mostly Catholic. So for her to be born in 1536 and to still be super Protestant says a lot about her faith, I think. But she was very kind of quiet and just wanted to study and be a Protestant. She preferred reading, and she didn't like hunting. She didn't like doing those things that people of the court, and since she was in line to the throne, they would have been expected to do, like dancing, entertaining, all that kind of fun stuff. So she claims that her upbringing was pretty harsh, but it was actually pretty normal for that time period. She didn't have a horribly abusive relationship with her parents, but they would smack her if she did something wrong. I mean, Catherine Howard's grandmother punched her when she found out she was having a relationship with her musician tutor. So, not okay by today's standards. Don't hit anyone ever. But she claims it was pretty harsh, but it was probably pretty standard for the time period. So Jane went to live with Thomas Seymour and Catherine Parr soon after Henry VIII's death in February 1547, and she actually lived with her cousin Elizabeth. I think they would be first cousins once removed. I think that's right. Yeah. So they were kind of chilling out. It wasn't very long because in 1548, Catherine Parr died, and Seymour was arrested for trying to marry Elizabeth, and then all kinds of other disgusting stuff.
Have you heard that apparently Catherine Parr was, like, almost 6 feet tall?
That is insane.
Yeah, I've heard, like, a lot of places that she was really tall, and that was one of the reasons why, like, Henry VIII thought she was, like, real hot.
That's nuts.
Yeah,
I mean,
they, like...
the average height back then was so much shorter than it is today.
Yeah, they, like, opened her grave, like, when she was, like, in, like, the late 1600s or early 1700s, because they were like, why not? And apparently they were like, her face was, like, really pretty, but then it started deteriorating because we opened up her grave and then we closed it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's
she
nuts.
was, like, super tall, redhead, and apparently was, like, great with a longbow.
Man, he had a thing for redheads.
Yeah,
now
he
I'm
did.
just picturing, like, a badass, like, female not Red Robin, what the hell? I'm hungry. A female, Robin Hood.
Yeah, I would, like, imagine, like, an Amazon warrior woman.
She sounds really badass.
Yeah,
I mean,
smart,
she was
athletic.
badass, but that's really fascinating.
Yeah.
He's got a thing for redheads, didn't he? So as I said, Jane was in line for the throne. So the Act of Succession said, first Henry's son Edward would be king, and then his heirs. And if he didn't have any heirs, then it would go to his eldest daughter, Mary. And then if she died and she didn't have heirs, it would go to Elizabeth. And then if Elizabeth died and didn't have any heirs, it would go to Francis's daughters. He kind of bypassed his daughters from his other sister in Scotland. I'm pretty sure there was a law that said that if you were born outside of England, your children couldn't inherit. But I'm not quite 100% sure about that. But he did kind of bypass his daughters. I think his other sister's daughters. So either way, Jane was in line for the throne, and her parents knew that, and so did Dudley, one of the main men at court. So he arranged for Jane to marry his son Guildford, which I made fun of that very, very much, but I found out that it was like the last name of the father's tutor or some influential person in his life.
Okay, so family name or something.
Yeah, it was an honor thing. So she married Guildford Dudley in 1553. In that same ceremony, her sister Catherine was married, and her sister Mary was betrothed. So they just had a great wedding free-for-all in 1553. That same year, Edward VI died, and in a brilliant move for Protestants, he said, my father's will is bunk, and Mary can't inherit because she's not legitimate, and Elizabeth can't inherit because she's not legitimate. So the next legitimate person is Jane. Bonus points, she's Protestant, and that's what I want. So it's reported that Jane didn't really want to be queen, but she ended up being queen for a full 9 days. Mary Tudor, meanwhile, found out what was happening, and she quickly assembled her posse. She had this badass army assembled very, very quickly and marched to London. So she rolled into town, and everybody who was like, yes, Jane is queen, was like, oh shit, just kidding. Mary's queen. Jane goes to the Tower. So she was put on trial and she was found guilty, which she was. She took the throne from the next in line. Although I guess it depends on whose will matters more, Henry VIII's or his son Edward VI, but that's a debate for a different time. So she was found guilty, but Mary wasn't willing to burn or behead her cousin quite yet until she married Philip of Spain and Wyatt's Rebellion broke out. And in Wyatt's Rebellion, it was just a bunch of people really unhappy about a Spaniard coming to the throne, and they were talking about putting Elizabeth on the throne and about maybe putting Jane on the throne. So either way, Jane wasn't implicated, and that kind of sealed her death, really. Mary was like, I can't face this risk anymore. I don't want to do it, but I gotta. So she had Jane beheaded, and the saddest part is for a rebellion that she had absolutely nothing to do with. She just wanted to be a good Protestant and study. And unfortunately, she couldn't. And so on February 12th, 1554, she was executed. And she was, less than 20. So that's the story of poor Jane Grey.
9 days, that's more than I can claim, so.
I don't really want to be a queen. I don't want that kind of power.
No, definitely don't.
I think that was being, like, the daughter of a duchess.
Yeah, or, like, marrying Harry.
Oh, I'd be on board with that. I'm totally gonna watch the royal wedding.
Mourning that. I was like, how dare he get married to somebody else? He was my last chance to marry a ginger prince.
I don't know if I'd want to marry into that royal family. I just read a biography about Princess Diana, and like, I've got, like, this real big anger towards Charles, so I wouldn't want him being my father-in-law.
Oh my god, that just reminded me. I read this book that was by the same woman that wrote the book that you were talking about in one episode. It was Sex with Kings.
Oh, yeah?
I read the opposite book that she wrote, Sex with Queens. I've never been more livid at that book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sounds about right.
I personally don't like her that much because she uses, like, almost no sources.
Yeah, when I was reading the book, I was like, well, this is super fascinating, but not so much actual info.
She wrote, she wrote about, Empress Alexandria of Russia, and she used one source. And it was
Please tell me she didn't claim that she had an affair with Rasputin.
She did.
Oh.
And she also said that Diana was, like, a whiny, bulimic little, like, wannabe who was, like, using everybody and, like, manipulating them. So
the book I read about Princess Diana, I can't remember the name, but I'll be sure to send it to you so you can reference it for your listeners. The book I read talked about Diana, and she really portrayed Diana as a person, and honestly, she sounds dramatic, and that's totally fine. There are a lot of people who are dramatic, but still very loving and caring people.
Mm-hmm.
And she had an incredibly unhappy marriage, and she had a lot of mental health issues.
Yeah.
That, I mean, there is still a stigma about mental health issues, so it was hard for her to address any. She was definitely bulimic. But she was in a very abusive relationship with a man who never wanted to marry her in the first place and had an affair from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't want to be her friend.
No.
But she was still a good person.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I love Diana, and that, like, actually made me infuriated, like, reading that part. I was like,
yeah.
I am going to write this woman a strongly worded letter.
I like that idea.
She also wrote one part where she was talking about how supposedly this duke's mistress, like, killed a guy and, like, buried him under the floorboards. And, like, it's completely it's, like, not true at all. And she was, like, saying it like it was fact. And she was, like, setting it up like a scene.
That's so disappointing. See, I feel like what? If you're going to write historical nonfiction, please actually be a historian. You don't have to necessarily have a degree, I guess, but use resources. If you aren't able to do that, then write some historical fiction, because you just can't make that kind of claim.
Yeah. And she's a journalist. She's not even, like, okay.
Oh, so she should know how to...
she should know how to do research. So
that makes it worse. She should know how to do research if she's a journalist.
Yeah.
That's sad. Well, either way, that's Lady Jane Grey.
Another tangent.
I live off of them.
Yeah, so do I. I literally can, like, see the commas in my sentences sometimes, where I'm like, excuse me, I need to, like, devolve into this.
Or like the parentheses where you're just like,
yes, and that's like 4 paragraphs.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. So I should say that Jane isn't a saint. She's a passion bearer of the English Reformation.
So what's the difference between a saint and a passion bearer?
So saints are with the Catholic Church, and passion bearers are basically people in other religions, like Russian Orthodoxy has them, and Protestantism has them, specifically different branches, but she's considered a passion bearer, and that's basically somebody who died or fought for the cause of...
so it's like a martyr.
So it's a martyr, yeah, basically.
Okay, cool.
So I have a list of martyrs that is 3 pages long, but I'm going to go through it as quickly as possible.
Lord.
I'm going to mention a few and just, like, not talk about them. So, Anne Askew is the first one that I'm going to talk about, and she died under Henry VIII. And she was born in 1521 to a family of wealthy landowners, and her dad, William, was a juror on the trial of the men accused alongside Anne Boleyn, which I thought was a fun fact.
Don't you love how those kind of things intertwine?
Yeah,
so great.
I do. She's also related to the man who led the Pilgrimage of the Grace, and her elder sister, Martha, was married off to a guy named Thomas Kim, and then Martha died. And Anne married Thomas when she was 15 so her dad could save money.
Oh.
Because he was like, I guess I already paid the dowry. Here's another one.
It's just like Catherine of Aragon.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just popping them out. So she was a devout Protestant, and she was studying the Bible and came to disbelieve in transubstantiation. I said that completely incorrectly. I know how to say it.
No.
But basically, she doesn't...
you know the difference between transubstantiation and consubstantiation, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Because transubstantiation is when the communion is literally the body and blood of Christ.
Yeah.
And consubstantiation is it's representative of the body and blood of Christ.
Which doesn't sound like it would be a huge issue.
It's a huge sticking point in that fight.
Huge issue.
Because it all comes down to idolatry, right?
Yeah, idolatry, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can totally see how that's an issue.
Yeah. And it was also an issue because in 1543, Henry VIII passed a law that it was illegal for people to read the Bible. Meaning women and men of no rank.
Sure, because if you're a noble man, if you're a wealthy white man, then you get all the benefits. Kind of like today.
True, 100%. So she apparently started talking openly about Protestantism, and it caused a scandal in Lincolnshire, where she lived with Thomas. And Thomas and her did not have a happy marriage because he was a Catholic.
Oh, womp womp.
And they had 2 kids, and he threw her out the house.
Oh, God.
But we don't know if the kids survived. They're never mentioned again. So we can hope, but...
Let's hope they did.
Yeah. She moved to London, and she met other Protestants, including Joan Bocher. She was hoping to get a divorce there, but that was denied. And while there, she was called the Fair Gospeler, because I guess she was very pretty and spoke the word of God.
Well, if you're pretty, everything's good.
Mm-hmm. But then, in 1545, when she was 24, her husband had her arrested and brought her back to Lincolnshire, I guess to somewhat repair the marriage. But she escaped and went back to London. And then she was arrested again the next year. And then again. And that time, she was tortured in the Tower of London.
So was she arrested all times because of her husband?
She was arrested, I guess, the first time because of her husband, the second time because she was preaching, and the third time was because she was preaching.
Oh, jeez.
And then she was tortured in the Tower of London, and she's the only woman recorded to be tortured in the Tower, which I think is a lie.
Hey, look at that. Henry VIII is progressive.
You know? Yeah, I guess. But... Like, in all the history, no other woman has been tortured there?
Maybe. I mean, if you think about it...
I hope...
There wasn't really a reason for other women to be tortured. Because... I mean...
Yeah, but there were other...
Look at the Nun of Kent in 34. She was executed, but she wasn't tortured.
Yeah.
And they were didn't they have pretty strict laws about who could and could not, like, nobles couldn't be tortured?
Nobles couldn't be tortured, but, I mean, I take laws in that time very loosely.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Like, everything has a loophole.
That's true.
But she was ordered to give the names of fellow Protestants, and she said no. And the torturers, Lord Chancellor Thomas... I have no idea how to say this guy's name. I see it all the time. Riotlessly?
I always assumed it was Rothsley.
Rothsley.
Because it's British and they don't pronounce half their letters.
That's probably correct. And then,
I can ask my British brother-in-law.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go to him.
And then Sir Richard Rich, which sounds like a fake name.
Every time I read about him, he's being a dick.
Yeah, and I think he probably plays jazz. Because what the fuck are you going to do with the name Richard Rich? They used the rack on her.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and she refused to change her beliefs. On the 18th of June, 1546, she was convicted of heresy and sentenced to burn at the stake. The 16th of July, that seems like a long wait. She was executed in Smithfield, London, and she was in such bad shape she could not walk, and she had to be carried on to the stake on a chair.
That's awful.
It's very Margaret Pole.
Yeah.
And she was executed with 3 other men who were Protestants, John Lascelles, Nicholas Belanian, yeah, also known as John Hemsley.
Sure.
And a tailor named John Adams or John Hadlam. But an anonymous supporter gave the 4 gunpowder so that the fire would explode.
Which sounds weird, but that would be a quicker death.
But apparently it did not work in her case.
Oh, poor Anne.
And she apparently died after about 15 minutes.
That's awful.
Yeah, so R.I.P. Anne. But she was also an accomplished poet. Her poems are really nice.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
But,
yeah, that sounds awful.
So I'm gonna
poor Anne.
Quickly go through all the rest of them.
Sure.
And then there's Joan Bocher, who was died under Edward VII. Don't know where she came from. People of the same last name lived in Romney Marsh. I have no idea where that is. She's associated with Anabaptists who came from the Low Countries and the Netherlands and immigrated to Kent.
I think I read a little bit about the Anabaptists, and they were a little low-go for that time period.
Yeah. I guess my family got rid of them, because my family was the ones controlling the Low Countries. So,
Your family sounds baller.
They were cool. The one guy was like, no, let's not bring the Inquisition to the Netherlands, and then Philip II had him executed.
Thanks, Philip, you jerk.
Fucking Philip. Literally, he's the reason I'm not wealthy. Or I'm not, like, a princess. Fuck you, Philip.
Piece of shit.
Literally, I hate him so much. He just looks like a bro. He looks like he would wear, like, a lid.
Yeah.
Anyway, her first conflict with the church came after she spoke against the sacrament of the altar, which is a fancy word for the Eucharist.
Sure.
Never heard that term before. But she was released from imprisonment by the commissary of Thomas Cranmer and Christopher Nevinson. She started believing in the idea that Christ was not an incarnate of the Virgin Mary, which is a huge issue.
That's like, okay, you're not
that's literally like
Christian anymore.
That's literally like, this is a philosophy, like we're practically Buddhist. Like,
yeah.
We're this close.
Yeah, that's definitely not Christian.
Yeah. So she was arrested as a heretic in 1548 and convicted in April 1549, which, good lord, that's at least 4 months in jail.
Yeah.
And after a year's imprisonment which various well-known religious figures tried to get her to recant, on May 2nd, 1550, she was burned at the stake.
God, that's awful.
Yeah. Margaret Poley under Mary I. John Fox, in his book of Passion Bearers, wrote, "She was in the prime of her life, pious, charitable, humane, learned in the scriptures, and beloved by all who knew her," which is lovely. And she was burned in 1555.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, and then another.
I'm gonna blame Philip for that one too.
Yeah, this one it's absolutely horrifying and terrible. So I'm not going to go too involved with the gory things, but Guillemine Gilbert, Perotine Massey were sisters who lived with their mother, Catherine Cochet. Perotine was married to another man, and she was very pregnant. And they were brought to court about a stolen goblet and found to be Protestants. They were returned to prison and found guilty of heresy and were sentenced to death. And the 18th of July, 1556, they were executed. As I said, Perotine was very pregnant and was still executed along with her baby. If you want to know more about that, look into it, but ye be warned, it's absolutely horrifying.
Okay, I actually think I know a little bit about the story.
It reads like a horror movie.
I don't even want to think about it.
It reads like a horror movie.
That's awful.
Yeah. So, fuck you, Philip, if that was you, or fuck you, Mary, if that was you.
Yeah, that was you.
Yeah. So, Agnes Prest under Mary I, she was known for telling a stonemason, "What a madman art thou, making them noses, which within a few days shall all lose their heads." And this was in a church, and she was basically like, all these saints' heads are gonna fall off. So,
oh, God.
Goodness. And she was burned 15th of August, 1557.
God.
And then there's Elizabeth Thackwell and Joan Horns. No information about them, but they're listed.
So many.
There's so many. And then there's two women who are named Agnes Potten and Joan Trunchfeld, who are just listed as two married townswomen, and I like to think that they were married together.
Oh, that's sweet.
But the one was, they lived in Ipswich, but they actually did have husbands. One was a shoemaker, and another one was a brewer.
Yeah,
so he knew how to party.
They were together.
Yeah. But they got in trouble for hiding a guy who was a priest, but also married. So he was a Protestant priest. And then he got burned, and then they found out that they were the conspirators with him, and they were burned after being kept in jail for almost 6 months.
God.
And Potten apparently was going back and forth on whether she wanted to admit her wrongs because she had little kids.
Aww.
So she was like, I don't know what I want to do. And then they were both just executed, and they both decided to die, I guess, honorably.
Yeah.
And then an honorable mention, a man, and it just says an old man from Buckinghamshire, burnt 1531. Which,
so awful.
I'm like, I feel so bad that he just doesn't have a name.
I know, poor old man.
Yeah, R.I.P. old man. We love you.
I hear ya.
Shout out. So, those are the saints and passion bearers of Tudor England, and who were all became famous in this time period. So.
It was a brutal time.
Mm-hmm.
There was no rest.
It was rough and tumble. And good Lord, even if you were a good person, like, you did not have a chance, like, on either side.
Yeah. There's no win. Well, now everybody needs to go and do something happy. Watch your favorite cartoon from elementary school or something.
Yeah, think about the Jesus baby foreskin. At least she
died,
she died at 33, but...
to your significant other that you want a foreskin ring.
Yeah. And if you get a divorce, make sure to pawn it, like, get the money.
Perfect.
So that somebody else can have his foreskin as a wedding ring.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. This has been really great. Thank you.
I'm glad to be on the show. I hope everybody liked it.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm, like, honored. I love your guys' podcast so much. So.
Thanks. It's still crazy to hear people I don't know listening to the podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love connecting with other history nerds.
Yeah. So if you ever need a historian to ask a question, I'm an art historian, so...
I'm coming for you.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again to Emily for joining me in the discussion about saints and passion bearers of the Tudor times. So I hope you all enjoyed the episode, and you guys will hear from me soon for the next installment of Queens of Our Past podcast. Thank you. Bye.